I remember when buying a game meant the whole thing was already there. There was a time when finishing a game felt unmistakable. You reached the end not because content ran out, but because the experience had said everything it needed to say. The credits rolled, the world stopped pulling at your attention. You set the controller down knowing there was nothing left to do. That sense of completion wasn't symbolic, it was concrete. The full version shipped at launch. What you bought was the experience as it was meant to exist. If updates came later, they fixed issues, they didn't extend the ending. You weren't waiting for what came next because you already had it. At some point, that expectation changed without much notice. Finishing a game stopped feeling final. Endings softened, completion became harder to pin down. Even when credits appeared, they no longer signaled closure. Not because the game lacked content, but because it wasn't built to conclude. What arrived at launch was no longer the finished experience, it was just the entry point. That shift didn't happen randomly either. Games became more costly to build, development stretched longer, pressure increased. In response, the structure adapted. A finished product brings revenue once, whereas a pipeline brings it again and again. Seasons, battle passes, rotating content, ongoing updates. The game no longer ended because an ending meant stopping the flow, and the design leaned towards continuity rather than conclusion. Completion creates a boundary, since when a game ends, the relationship does too. There's nothing left to unlock, nothing left to keep you there, nothing left to sell. From a monetization view, that boundary isn't helpful. Ongoing systems aim to solve that. You have progress resets, new goals replace old ones. Engagement becomes circular instead of linear. The game doesn't ask to be finished, it asks to be maintained. The result is subtle, but it stays with you. You're no longer moving towards an ending. You're moving inside a system. Progress exists, but it doesn't resolve. Effort matters, but it rarely closes anything. Stopping feels like less finishing and more like leaving something half done. Even when you step away, the game keeps moving. Seasons advance, rewards expire, new content appears whether you're there or not. But the issue here is that people respond to contained experiences. The beginnings build anticipation, the middle holds attention, and endings allow meaning to settle. Without closure, experiences blur together. Time spent doesn't form a finished memory. It stretches outward instead, always tied to what comes next. That doesn't make the experience worse, it just makes it harder to complete. This direction matches modern incentives. Retention can be measured, completion cannot. Ongoing engagement can be tracked, refined, and monetized. Closure can't. So design bends towards what can continue rather than what can conclude. The game becomes a service, the experience becomes a loop, and endings quietly fade. Games don't feel unfinished because something went wrong, they feel unfinished because many of them were never meant to end in the first place.